So getting into Volume 8 of Jobless Reincarnation, I've been hearing a lot of talk about Volumes 7, 8, 9, and I think a little bit more after that a lot of people didn't really like these volumes. They felt it was boring, disjointed, and what I really like about this particular volume is how, it changes the pace, it changes the environment, it's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and it's not stagnated. That's one thing that I kind of find annoying about some light novel series, is where everything is just in the same location and nothing ever moves or changes or evolves. Rudy is moving forward, he's evolving, he's changing, he's exploring, and he's going from place to place to place. So it's not stagnated in one location. But it's also not just like changing location, the whole atmosphere is also changing, because when you look at the early stages of his life, he's very much in that stage of, okay, I'm with my family, I'm growing up, making a friend, then he's become a tutor, and then he's thrown into this massive situation where he's in the demon continent, and now he's no longer fighting for his life so much out in the demon continent. Now he's sort of recuperating from this stuff that's happened with Eris, and now he's in a university learning magic and making new friends and discovering stuff about the displacement issue. So again, the atmosphere is changing and evolving. But in the early stages of the volume, it very much just builds up Rudy's training. He's doing some jobs, some freelancing. He kills a red raven dragon. I'm sure someone's going to correct my mispronunciation, but he ends up killing this pretty powerful monster. Of course, he went with a team as well, the same fella that he ended up leaving with Volume 7, but he ends up basically soloing it, and so a lot of, big rumors go around of, oh my god, he's so powerful, but at the same time, as he noted, the creature was pretty wounded to start with, so he had an advantage to begin with. So it's kind of one of those where the story kind of always gets blown out. It's kind of the glory of, a story that gets repeated and it slightly changes and it always gets a little bit more, exaggerated each time. But I still really love that because it's very realistic. But I just know that once season 2 happens, people are just going to go, see, Rudy's overpowered. And it's like, he had an advantage. It was weakened already. But it's still pretty fun because it adds to the glory of Rudy and it adds to that fun reputation that he builds, and it ripples much more further on later on down the volume where people find out and go, oh, you're Quagmire, you defeated that thing. He's like, yeah, it was weakened though. So, of course, he defeated that. And, of course, a particular thirsty little elf pops up out of nowhere and she goes, I found you, Rudy. And that honestly was really funny because so many people misunderstood their relationship, thinking they were like a couple. And here she is sleeping with every man in the entire town, even the ones that he was working with, and when they bump into each other, they're just like, oh my god, man, I'm really sorry, I slept with your girl, and it's just, he's just like, no, it's fine, I can't get it up anyway, so what does it matter, and she's not my girl. So I just felt even more sorry for Rudy because honestly, who wouldn't want a taste of that elf? She's definitely appetizing, to say the least. Of course, she is definitely a fun character. He ends up getting a letter from the University of Magic, which basically at the start he's like, no, I'm not going to go to, because he was going to look for Zenith. But then, she's like, you should live your life, it's alright, Roxy and Paul are going to go with a team, they're going to go save, Zenith, it'll be all fine. But then he also has a dream with the man god, and the man god's like, if you want to solve your issue down below, your little motorboat that's not getting it up, you need to go to this university and that will be solved, and also learn about the displacement issue. So he basically ends up doing that because the man god says so. Again, to be noted, I don't trust the man god. I know the man god is up to something, and it's clear as day that the man god is using Rudy for his own uses. But so it's obvious that the man god is manipulating him and stringing him along with a carrot kind of on a stick. So Rudy ends up agreeing. He basically said, all right, fine, if it fixes my issues, I'll go to the university. She also agrees to come along as well. Of course, you find out about her curse. I've put that in a separate video, just going more detailed into her curse. It doesn't actually really say too much about her curse other than just she needs to do what she does to refertilize because of a curse. So it doesn't dive too much, but it does explain the basics. That is where, of course, they get to the University of Magic and they begin their test. Well, particularly Rudy, which of course is where Rudy goes up against a upstanding student named Fitz. And I'm just going to tell you that I love Fitz. Fitz is the best individual on the planet. No one can change my mind. I love Fitz. You should love Fitz. If you don't love Fitz, well then you're in denial. You really do love Fitz. Fitz is the best. Okay, getting into it. Basically, Rudy mops the floor of Fitz. Only because Rudy uses disturbed magic, which actually he learned from Ordsted, which honestly is kind of clever. I mean, that's the thing about Rudy. He's learning fun, interesting little tricks from other people, and he's observing. Like, that's something that's really clever. Like, Rudy's learning from his experiences, which you should do in life. But I just really liked that he used that on Fitz. But of course, he had the eye as an advantage, so he's like, oh yeah, you're gonna pull out the wand, I'll do disturb magic, and then he fires off a rock cannon, does a little cut on him, and voila, that's the end of the match. Rudy feels really bad about that and basically goes, hey, thanks for letting me win, and basically Rudy panics thinking Fitz actually hates him when in fact he doesn't. I thought it was hilarious, but I thought it was also really funny because there's a little bit of a backstory behind Fitz that kind of, again, explains, why Fitz is in the situation they're in, who they're associating with. All those extra chapters build up to this, and that is one thing I noted in my previous video, I believe, was I was talking about how I like the extra chapters because it builds up to stuff, and this is basically it. If you had all this dumped in you at the beginning, you'd be kind of like, what? But I liked the way each volume had these extra chapters so that when these characters do get introduced, you at least have some emotional investment in them. So, of course, they explained the beast people, the bunny guy, as I call him, the guy that snaps necks. I did end up seeing one comment in my video, someone explaining what that movie was. Thank you to that person. I couldn't remember the movie name, but a bunch of people did get it as well. That's why I just called him the bunny guy. But of course, the guy that snaps necks, also another fun nickname as well. He ends up meeting him at the university, and of course he basically does the whole master kind of thing. But I think what really got me interested in the whole actual volume was the relationship between Fitz and Rudy. Of course, we all know who Fitz is. If you haven't worked out who Fitz is, what are you doing? Because it's pretty obvious. It explains who Fitz is. At the start it doesn't really, it kind of leaves you a little bit guessing, but I'm just like, yeah, I already knew ages ago who Fitz was. But I just really love Fitz because Fitz has just put on the glasses, has the different hair color, but the hairstyle is exactly the same. And the wand is exactly the same as well, which really kind of goes, oh yeah, I know that kind of wand look. It's almost like it's just right at the tip of his tongue. He's like, Rudy, just pay attention to who Fitz is. Just pretend the glasses aren't there, Rudy. Just pretend they're not there, and you work it out. It's your long lost friend. Oh, I wanted to strangle Rudy so many times because he's like right there. But I thought it was really funny because Rudy starts to kind of almost fall in love with Fitz, thinking Fitz is a man, which is the exact same situation that kind of happened when he was a kid, where he was kind of like, oh yeah, a bit of a pretty boy and all that, kind of mistaked, him as a man back then. But he's doing the exact same thing with Fitz now. So I thought it was just really funny. But Fitz is very defensive about Rudy, which obviously, yeah, makes sense. But I just kind of really love the chemistry between Rudy and Fitz and their kind of back and forth, and the fact that Fitz wants to tell Rudy, but I think Fitz just doesn't feel comfortable yet. I also think Fitz is kind of having a little bit of fun as well, because I think maybe Fitz is seeing, a different side to Rudy, or more so seeing that side of Rudy as he's matured and grown up, and thinking that maybe, Rudy will act different around Fitz once he knows who Fitz is, and also change of gender. But what I thought was really interesting, and at least this is how I interpret it. Not everyone's going to interpret this the same way, but at least this is how I interpret it. I actually thought Rudy was starting to get the motors going again downstairs. Like, you could kind of tell that his motor downstairs was starting to get a little bit more excited when around Fitz, which is interesting because Rudy thinks Fitz is a guy, and you could kind of see that attraction between them. At least that's how I interpret it. I'm sure some people are going to say, no, that's not how, but I just felt like there was some deeper connection. Like, you could tell Rudy just feels really comfortable and actually enjoys the presence, and there's some type of connection slowly building up. A picture says 1,000 words. In this case, 1,000 words makes many different pictures of how you want to interpret it. But as time goes on, basically the relationship kind of builds up. They're learning about the teleportation stuff. Basically, Fitz was learning about it, trying to use that as a way to kind of find where Rudy was, which Rudy doesn't know that, but, you know, fill in the gaps. So they're kind of working together to find out some information about it. And then you've of course got Zan, which again, SnapNet guy. He's trying to make figures. He doesn't have the ability to make figures the way Rudy does. And this is something that actually was quite interesting, because I've seen a lot of videos explaining like power explained for Rudy. And a lot of them basically just say that, oh, well, Rudy knows how to do silent casting because of his past life. But there's this kind of theory in this volume that the reason why they can do silent casting is because you can really only learn it at a younger age, and that if you're older, learning silent casting isn't really possible. So it feels like there are two sets of rules. One, you've got to understand the fundamentals of what you're casting, which is why Rudy can't do healing magic, but Fitz can, because Fitz has learned a lot about healing magic. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly from the previous volumes, Fitz was learning a lot of healing type magic from Zenith, because Zenith was a healer. So Zenith probably passed on a lot of her advanced knowledge to Fitz, and Fitz then had the silent casting and then was able to again learn how to do silent casting healing. And I've seen comments of people going, but how does Fitz has silent casting for healing? She doesn't understand the fundamentals, or he doesn't understand the fundamentals. Doesn't really matter which one you say. But you got to remember, you don't have to be from an alternative world to learn silent casting. In Volume 8, they even talk about a teacher that knew how to do silent casting. And so the theory is that learning silent casting is something that you learn when you're younger. So it seems to be it's an age thing. And that's the same thing about the mana pool as well. It seems to be that to get a large mana pool, you need to at least start doing magic at the youngest age possible to build that mana pool up. It's kind of like stretching the mana pool at a young age to build it up as you get older and older and older, so you become better at it. So as long as you stay, you know, using magic at a young age and all the way into an older age, you at least have that strong mana pool. So it grows as you grow. But if you don't start until you're much older, it's never going to be able to grow to the same amount as someone that's been doing it their whole life, which makes sense. It just seems to be, if you really want to be super powerful at magic, you need to start as at a young age as possible. Of course, understanding the fundamentals from a past life will definitely help you, but it's not the be all end all. And I think the reason why Rudy has such an advantage is because of the fact that his past life, he understood, you know, reading and writing, so he was able to adapt another language pretty quickly, which allowed him to learn magic because he was able to read the book as soon as possible, which allowed him to start training, which then gave him the opportunity to learn silent casting because he was young. In my opinion, he's not overpowered, he's just gifted and also very lucky. But again, I'm sure some people are going to disagree because, you know, interpretation, etc, etc. But I really loved this volume. There is a lot of other stuff that happens as well, but I just feel like those are the things that really stand out to me. There's a lot of stuff with Zan as well, with the figures and Zan wanting to get a slave, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I kind of get it in the medieval sense. Again, that's why it's like, it's medieval times. That kind of stuff was quite known in that time. So from a fantasy setting in a light novel, it makes sense. But at least Zan treats, you know, this young girl with respect and care. And my concern was that, you know, if this little girl wasn't able to make this statue or made mistakes, Zan might get angry because Zan has this tendency to kind of flip out. But it seems to be Zan is getting a control of the emotions and understand, you know, you got to learn how to make these statues at a young age. You got to learn silent casting. It's learning experience and practice. And so Zan is working with this kid to basically learn how to make these figures. The last thing to talk about is Rudy's religious love for Roxy. I thought it was hilarious, especially at the fact that poor Zan's getting bullied by these beast girls, and these beast girls are vicious. But the fact is that what made Rudy snap was the Roxy statue destruction. And Rudy's just like, there's no mercy. There's no mercy. You destroyed the relic. It's war. It's a crusade. And Rudy just mops the floor of these girls. Like, they did not see it coming. And so he basically re-educates them on their ways, and very quickly do they learn to not mess with Rudy. But I thought what was interesting is that they don't fear Rudy, they actually respect him, because as they point out, you know, they like Rudy because he's strong. Yeah, they think probably he's a little bit weird because of his zealous love for Roxy, but at the same time, those beast people also worship the divine beast as well, so they probably understand, you know, alright, well, you know, everyone's got their own religion, their own religious relics, and Rudy clearly has a lot of love and respect for Roxy, so, you know, they all become friends. And Fitz, of course, is kind of a bit of a bystander in all that. It's just, I really loved this volume. I really like the change of atmosphere, the new characters, the old characters, how the atmosphere is changing. Of course, the elf girl is there as well, but she's kind of more background, sort of more in the late part, and I feel like she's going to play a much more prevalent role going forward. But again, there is many other stuff that happens in this volume, but I don't feel like going into all of it. There is probably going to be some analysis videos later on, diving into other itty-gritty little details, but really love the volume, really looking forward to Volume 9, and finally seeing how and when the confession is done between Fitz and Rudy. So again, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comment section down below, but if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more anime content, and I'll see you beautiful nerds in the next video.